Well, hi and welcome back to my beautiful office. Today's subject is the R6 again, but this will be my final review. I give you my honest opinion on what I like and dislike. So we'll run through each piece, each working element of the camera. Yeah, I'll give you my honest opinion on it. Right, so let's start with my favourite thing on the camera. That's the EVF. From the first photograph I took and had a look at it in that EVF, I was just amazed. It's just awesome to be able to have that ability to look at a photograph in detail in the viewfinder. On my other cameras in the past, yeah, you couldn't do that. So I used reading glasses. So to be able to review images on the actual monitor, you have to pull the glasses out of the pocket. It's pouring down with rain, or all those sort of things that make it hard to see on the monitor properly. Bright light, all those sort of things. Thing of the past. I go to the EVF every time to review my images, and it doesn't lie to you. You can see the noise, you can see the real image quality, where monitors have always lied, on Canon cameras anyway. They always make things look at least 30% better than they actually are. Now with the viewfinder, it has a sensor on there so that it lights up when you're putting your eye up against it, to save battery life and that sort of thing. But what I found is when I'm on a dewy morning walking through long grass, you occasionally get a spot of water on there, and the screen at the back blanks out because the EVF is being used. It took me a little while to work it out. I thought that the monitor was stuffed. Took the battery out, put it back in, did all the usual things to try and see whether it had come back, and it wouldn't. But then the penny dropped when I saw that rain, well, the dew drop on the sensor there. There's a good tip for you. Keep it clean all the time. You won't freak out because your monitor's not working anymore. Let's talk about the monitor, seeing as how we're on the subject. It's small, and it does crop in a bit more on the screen itself when you're reviewing things and using it live as well. So it's not fantastic for photographing and filming, but it does the job. You can see really well, but it's just so small. I love how you can review your images on there by scrolling. So scrolling through till you get the right one. That's just amazing. Just like a mobile phone. I come across that accidentally. I didn't notice it in the user manual, which is unusual for me, because I go through them in detail before I even buy a camera. I'll download it as soon as it's available. So I'd missed that, but I accidentally come across it by cleaning the screen with my finger. There was a bug on there or something, and the photos start moving across. So yeah, that's just an awesome feature to have on the camera. But you don't use the monitor that much for reviewing my images, as I've already said, but to scroll through quickly and find the one I'm after, and then go on to the EVF to look at it in fine detail. As far as flippy screens go, I originally, before I bought this camera, thought my next camera has to have a flippy screen. I want one, and I reckon I'd use it a lot. You know what? I don't. Very, very rarely do I use a flippy screen. So there you go. What about image quality? Well, it's sharp and clear. It's a really good sensor on this. I love how it brings out the fur on the Agile Anti-Kindness, because the tips are pretty sort of clear, so it's, almost sort of see-through. And I've had issues with like an aliasing sort of look with rainbow colours in them on my other cameras. but not with this one. So the image quality is just beautiful in that department. Get quite a large bird like a boobook owl or something like that. The gloss that's on the eyes, it's just beautiful. I've had a little bit of that with the 7D Mark II, not to the extent that this camera gives you. Dynamic range is, in my opinion, it's not a lot, but it's better than what I've had in the past, that is for sure. Must be around 10 at least, I reckon. Well, that's my opinion on it anyway. Now when we're going into lower light, going up high in ISOs, I don't really like to go over 32. Depends on the subject that I'm photographing. If there's a lot of grey on it, like the agile antechinus, there's a lot of birds in here that are grey, well, that starts to get washed out. It does affect it. So go up to 4000 ISO, that it becomes quite noticeable. But under that, it's okay. So that's sort of my limit really that I like to stick on. I do go over every now and then 4 to 5 when the circumstances call for it and my subject doesn't have a lot of grey on it. Focusing system, what's my opinion on that? Canon have a flaw in this focusing system. Now with eye detect and tracking, it's much better than I've had in the past, that is for sure. Eye detect, when it can see an eye, is just brilliant. It is something to behold, that is for sure. But it's not the best in forest environment. You know, it can get distracted by other things that look like an eye to it. A lot of the birds and animals that I photograph and film in here, they have small eyes. There's small birds. The agile antechinus has a small eye, so it does wander off, but you get bird in the right conditions, yeah, it'll just stick to it and stay on it, and if it turns its head, then it will get a square on it. So it's beautiful in that area. But where this camera falls in a heap and annoys the shit out of me is single point. Print out a horizontal line off your printer, put it on the wall, go to focus on it, it struggles to do it. So this is what I'm actually seeing in the forest environment the most, is a bird will land on a branch, you know, not a big bird, I'm only talking little bird like this, something like that, and I think it's going to be quite obvious to the camera, something to focus on, what I'm putting it on, but it goes straight to the background. Now, this is something that doesn't happen occasionally, this happens a lot. And yeah, it just takes me right back to the 5D Mark II days with that shitty bloody focusing system. So it's frustrating. There's ways around this, but birds land on a branch, give you 3-4 seconds to take a photograph, and then they're off. They ain't gonna wait for you. So it makes this bloody camera frustrating. Now, it does happen a lot. Trying to get it back, you can switch on to use the focusing ring, or you can have it off if you like, but it's best to have it on because you can just grab it quickly and try and get it before the bird nicks off, bring it back, or take the camera down on the trunk of the tree that it's on or something that's close by, go down, quickly focus on that and then bring it back up again. The other one is, of course, we have to use back button focusing for this camera. It is essential to be able to have both going. So run over to the star button is what I have my eye detect, or everybody else has as well. Eye detect and tracking, sometimes, well a lot of times, that can help me out. It won't particularly find the eye on the bird a lot, but the tracking might grab the branch And that does happen probably about 50% of the time. It'll grab the branch. So that's what I tend to do straight away before I do anything else, is see whether that, going over to the eye detect button, see whether that works. If it doesn't, bring the camera down, focus on something else, bring it back up. That doesn't work, grab the ring, and hopefully my subject's still there. But there is that like 10-15% of the time that the single point will get it, understand what it's supposed to be focusing on. Let's talk about the video capabilities of this camera. And they certainly make life a lot easier these days, having photography completely separate and video staying the way you had it set up the last time you use it. So being able to have the shutter speed set permanently in one spot is just awesome. We can set this camera up really quickly, and we can hand hold it as long as we're not completely zoomed out. Well, for me anyway, I struggle a lot with holding it completely stable. As good as it is with that IBIS and combined with the lens stabilization, I still move around a little bit. We don't get the controls that you have on the R5, of course. We just have manual. We don't have aperture priority, shutter priority, or anything like that. It's just set your shutter speed, set your aperture, and then your ISO. We can have ISO in automatic though if we want to help us out. When I'm in a fixed position, I just do that myself, so I get it the way I want it with exposure. But there are some times when things are moving really quickly, I just quickly flash it over to auto ISO, and it does a pretty good job. Now what I absolutely love about is I'm photographing something and I think I would love to get this on film. This is an event I may never see again, but I haven't got time to put it on a tripod or you know, muck around with settings. I need to do it instantly. So I've taken my photographs, got what I needed, and I just want a little bit of footage. We just hit the record button on the top. It goes into automatic and it gives us something beautiful. But if an animal is moving quickly, of course we're in automatic. All cameras do this, all video cameras will go and move the shutter up before it starts moving down or opening up other things. You can see it when you've got an animal or something that's moving very quickly. A bird in flight, hovering, see how choppy that is. So obviously the shutter speed was up extremely high, probably up maybe even to 1,000th of a second. So we're getting this choppy look about it. But you know, when the circumstances are right, just hitting a record button and the camera just does it. Just is awesome. We capture that moment that we know is going to disappear in seconds, and trying to set the camera up properly in manual mode, that we probably won't get it, but doing that we've got it. The image quality has risen dramatically. 7D Mark II, the image off that always looked plasticky to me, especially with the blacks. Yeah, it's just not pleasing for me. It's alright for blogging, but not as a professional image. It just wasn't up to scratch. With the ISO, I've gone up to 6,000. I haven't tried it any higher than that. I haven't needed to, but 6,000 ISO. And there's just a slight bit of noise in the background. Software could get rid of that without any problem because it's not a lot. So image quality is just beautiful, and it matches my XF400. They're very, very similar. I have a lot more flexibility though with the XF400. has a beautiful wide dynamic range mode where this doesn't. We have that log 3, but that's nowhere near as good as what I'm getting out of the XF400 as far as dynamic range goes. But man, yeah, it's quite an acceptable camera to use for filming things, as long as we're not getting things too bright. For me, yeah, things have to be quick. Not having ND filters built in, we have to put one on the end. You can't have that on for photographing wildlife. Constantly we have to take it off and then put it on. If you want to film, and that's something you've planned, you take some photographs and then you've got time to be able to put an ND filter on. That's just great. The camera becomes quite a hugely usable piece of equipment. But yeah, the dynamic range is still an issue with very, very bright subjects. The XF400 is what I would use for those sort of situations, not this camera. But there you go. That's my opinion on this camera. It's not the be all and end all. It has its faults like any camera. Put two cameras together and of course you've got the ultimate camera. We're never going to have that, but this is a hell of a lot better than I've ever had in the past. It's an extremely beautiful camera. We work around the faults as usual. They make us a better photographer and filmmaker. Well, the R6 has certainly changed the way I photograph in a forest environment. No need for a flash, pretty well much non-existent now. Twice last year I used it, just because the circumstance called for it, because of huge dynamic range problem, and that's where I'll only ever use a flash for now. It's got to, when it's extreme. But for normal everyday use now, with a subject that is in a dimly lit area, like these boo book owls. Now getting the balance with some of the light that's coming through the fronds and that in the background there. Still have to pick the right time of day, but there's no need for a flash anymore, and they're quite a hard subject to stop getting red eye because they have huge irises. Any other bird in the reserve, it doesn't matter, you could use a flash on because they've got small irises and they're daytime birds, and you just don't get red eye with them. But for owls, yeah, they're a challenge, but no more. With the 7D Mark II, it wouldn't have been able to do that at all. I'd have to use a flash. So that means putting a flash on a tripod, get that communicating with the camera, because it's off the camera, you know, there's all those sort of things to get it on another angle. The IBIS helps out a lot, because those shots were taken with a shutter speed of 100 and an ISO of 3000. Yeah, it's just changed the way I use the camera. The other thing that the R6 has changed for me as well is being able to rely on TV mode, or time value mode, or if you don't have a Canon camera, that is shutter priority. I would always use my 7D Mark II in a forest environment manual. Time value mode, shutter priority, that's what I would use out in the open paddocks, because blue skies, nothing's going to change a hell of a lot, so your ISO would stay the same, your shutter speed stay the same, and the aperture would be able to come up or close down when the bird comes down into the tree line, because our light value is changing. So that's the only time that I would use shutter priority with the 7D Mark II. But now with the R6, much more reliable in a forest environment. So that just helps me out with things that are happening quickly in front of you. Not worrying about the aperture, that can go up and down. The ISO's close to what it should be, and the shutter speed set to 1,000th of a second, like it is all the time. So yeah, it has changed how I photograph in a forest environment a lot. Right, that's all I've got for you for today. Hope you enjoyed me rabbiting on about the R6. Hopefully, for your sake, for the last time. Yeah, I don't think I need to talk about it anymore. It's a great camera. It's got some faults, like all cameras have. We work around them. They make us better photographers. And if you'd like to subscribe to my channel and get more of this amazing stuff, click on my pretty little faces down in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. Hit the little bell and you'll get notification whenever I do anything else. And if you like this video, that would be awesome if you could give me the thumbs up. Help my poor little channel grow, and boy does it need it. And if you want to go and have a look at all the other mad and crazy things I've been doing in the past, click on my icon right here at the end of this video. Take you to my channel. There's over 200 videos to choose from. I talk about camera stuff, photographing and filming in a forest environment. Take you on adventures. Oh man, go and have a browse. There'll be something there of interest to you, I am sure. And just remember, if you don't do, you don't get. So get out there and start photographing and filming wildlife. And I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.